Hey, hello everyone, and welcome to the Language Cert Energize Your Classroom webinar series. And we're very excited to have you join us today. It's great to be here with you in our teaching community. We're waiting for participants to join, and as we do that, it will be great to hear from you. Write us just a short message, a hello, and where you're joining from. And we are going to be starting very soon. I'm going to be welcoming our speaker in a minute. My name is Silvia Carastati, and I am the head of teacher support for Language Cert. Hello from Rome and from Athens. We've got people joining as we are, and from Padua, from Pakistan, Italy, Trento, Brescia, and Florence. Hello everyone. Turkey, though, France, Reggio Emilia, Malaysia, UK. Great to see all of you joining us from all over the world. It is a great pleasure to be here with Chantal Walsh today, and she's our speaker for this second Energize Your Classroom webinar series. And I am particularly very excited about the topic today, thinking about creativity. And Chantal has been thinking about this topic for a number of years. It's a passion of hers. What I'm very as we were talking and preparing for this, it's great to actually hearing from a practicing teacher. So Chantal is a teacher, she's a teacher trainer, and she is not just talking about creativity, she's practicing it with your students. She believes that bringing creativity to the language classroom is a way to kind of look for fresh ideas for teaching lexis, for teaching grammar. And she's also always finding kind of new ways to engage everybody in the learning process. I think another, and from how I know her, another passion of hers is mindfulness and well-being in the classroom. And we will have a chance to think about that in our next webinar with Chantal later on this year. Chantal, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Lovely to be here.
So the floor is yours. And I think it's great to have you all here. So I will just share your slides, and we're ready to start. So again, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us. Great. Yes, we can see them perfect.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, well, it's a real pleasure to be here with you all. As usual, we always say thank you because we really appreciate the fact that you're probably running here from school, and so it's very appreciated that you want to dedicate this time to spend with us and to talk about creativity. We're going to start straight away with the question so we can all kind of get into the theme and start thinking. When you hear this word creativity, what do you think of? What comes to your mind? And I'm actually going to stop sharing because I want to have a little look in the chat with you as we're going through. So when you hear this word creativity, what comes to your mind? Okay, inspiration, drawing, happiness. Oh, that's lovely. Hello from Greece. Ideas. Hello from Piedmont. Okay. So it's interesting that somebody said creativity and happiness, sort of sharing some kind of ideas, maybe not so common, something that creates inspiration. Okay, so they're sort of big words, aren't they? Ideas, art, inspiration, being original, thinking out of the box. Okay, hello from Turin. Motivation. Not boring students, this is important as well. Imagination, life, going with the flow, not type joy. And it's really lovely actually to hear the words that you're putting in because they're very, very positive. Joy, happiness, ideas, motivation, 21st century skills. So there's a lot. There's a lot there when you think of creativity. And I think sometimes also this word creativity can sound a little bit daunting, because, as teachers, teaching is quite a demanding job as it is. And I think sometimes when we put the idea of creativity, it can kind of feel like, oh, what else do I have to do now? And sometimes it can feel like we need to have a kind of a magic bag, like I have here, like a Mary Poppins bag. And from this bag, magical things can happen in the classroom, which can make the students feel really excited and not bored. as you said. And while that is very important, sometimes when we talk about creativity, we're also talking about other things, as well as all of the beautiful things that you wrote there. So just going back here for a moment, my interpretation of creativity as well, it's kind of really very student-centered. So thinking about the needs, the interests, and the learning styles of students when we think about creativity, as well as all the wonderful things that you said. And so I kind of put a little list here together, and you can tell me what you think. If we were to think about things that maybe creative teachers do in the classroom, so looking for interesting ways to engage learners, which you said before, so we don't want to bore our learners, committed to helping their students progress and succeed. So we're thinking about them. Also being flexible, adapting lesson plans when necessary. And I think that's very important, isn't it? When we first start teaching, we feel that we have to follow the plan. And I think as we get more confident and we get more experience, we understand that we can actually stop an activity if it's not working, and we can just go on and try to do something else. Also, creative teachers experiment with different teaching strategies, techniques, curious, interested. And as I thanked you before, if you're here at this hour of the evening, I can imagine that you're curious and interested. And so I'm sure your students are very lucky to have you. Creative teachers are also reflective. They encourage reflection in their learners. And they also put energy into creating a kind of a welcoming and safe learning environment. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with the idea of sort of being, using different teaching strategies or creating interest, that students feel it's a safe place where also they can experiment and they can feel confident in learning. And so this is, a kind of a summary. And so maybe when you hear this idea of a creative teacher, you can probably confidently say, well, yeah, actually, I think I'm there. Okay, so I like this image very much, where we see all of these wonderful, inspiring people, but once upon a time, they were all students as well, children in a classroom. And we can imagine that David Beckham maybe learned very differently to Madonna or Vincent van Gogh. And so the challenge that we have as teachers is always also keeping in mind that students all learn in different ways. And so probably this is where the creativity comes in, where we have our lesson plan, we have our curriculum, and then we say, okay, this maybe will work for some of the students, but not all of the students. So what can we add in to make it a bit more inclusive, that we're getting everybody involved? I'm just going to pop into the chat box for a second. I see you're still writing some things. Okay, so everybody's saying also a question of energy. It is energy. And I think one of the things as well is the fact that we're teaching language. And so we're very lucky on the one hand, because we're teaching such an interesting subject. And there's so many things we can do in the classroom. But the other side of teaching language is that we really need to consolidate certain grammatical forms, certain vocabulary items, and we may find ourselves not wanting to be repetitive. So, for example, if we take simple things like the past simple, present perfect, these are very important grammatical items that we need our students to learn. And so we're constantly trying to think of new different ways of teaching them, or rather repeating the same concepts, but not boring our students. And this, I think, is where creativity comes in, and having different ideas. Okay, so today is a very practical session. Okay, so we're going to do a lot of activities together. So I'm delighted to see you using the chat box. So please continue to do so. You might look at some of these activities and kind of say, oh yeah, but I know that, or I've done that already. And that's wonderful. So maybe we're going to kind of dust off some ideas. You might say ideas that maybe you did in the past and you kind of forgot about. You might say, oh, actually, maybe I should try that again. Or maybe there just might be a different slant on some things that you're already doing. My hope is that by the end of the session, you have a couple of practical ideas to go back into the classroom with. Okay, so looking at the the first sort of theme, because we're going to look at a couple of different themes today. It's the idea of doing things in English. So kind of going back to what we were saying before, of getting students producing language and creating lessons that they want to speak, that they want to be involved, that they find interesting. And so, you know, this idea of doing things in language is not particularly new. We know that if students are participating in the learning process, then obviously this produces better educational outcomes at all levels, from primary right up to university. If students are passive and just listening, then obviously the learning is done on a different level. So we want students doing things. So there's so many, as I said before, we're so lucky because we teach language, that there's so many different areas that we could, you know, incorporate into the language classroom. So we have about an hour together, so we can't look at all of these things, okay? But we're going to look at some of them. But some of the areas I think that kind of blend quite naturally with language, obviously dictation, conversation, art, emotions, film, music, poetry, kinesthetic, storytelling, grammar, games. I mean, there's millions of things that we can do. So we're going to have a little look at some of these areas and some specific activities that we could do in the classroom related to them. Okay, I'm just going to have a look in the chat box as well. Some of the teachers here are writing learning by doing, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Using realia, which is really important, bringing things to life, especially in primary. This is where the Mary Poppins bag is important. And using authentic materials, I think this is very important as well, because it does make it more interesting, but this is also challenging, maybe with lower level students. So this is something we can talk about as well, that it's not always that easy to think, how can I use authentic materials with maybe A1, A2 students? So this perhaps can sound like a bit of a cliche, because we've all heard of this proverb at some stage, but it is really, really true, I think, at the end of the day as well. I don't know if you agree with me. You know, I hear and I forget, I see, I remember, I do and I understand. This idea of putting things into action, putting things into practice, as somebody wrote before, the learning by doing. So we're going to talk first of all about getting students talking. So obviously we're language teachers, so this is kind of one of the most important aims we have, that we want them to produce language and for them to feel motivated, to feel satisfied with the language that they're producing. But sometimes we can forget what it's like to be in the student's shoes, and it can be terrifying to learn a new language. And I don't know if you agree with me there, but I remember, I'm coming to you from Italy, and I remember when I first started learning Italian, I was so embarrassed. I was so embarrassed to speak in front of people, that I was going to make a million mistakes. And so sometimes, you know, we might forget how vulnerable language learners are. At all ages, really, but, you know, also if we teach adult students, you know, it's not that easy to start learning a language from scratch, maybe later on in life. And so it's also thinking, what I wanted to think about first of all was, for example, the first lessons that you have with students, when we know that they feel a little bit nervous, a little bit shy, what kind of activities we could do. And I will admit to you, Sylvia said before, I teach on a daily basis. So sort of everything we're going to mention or talk about here, I've used with students. And this is probably one of the things I nearly always do for the first lesson of a course. It's a very simple activity, but it works very, very well. Where students basically have to just draw 8 boxes, and I ask them to put into the box just a word or two to help them remember their answer. So I might ask them, for example, in box 1, to write the name of a dream job when they were a child. So maybe they were budding astronauts or doctors, I don't know. Box 2, 2 passions in their life, and so on. And obviously I'm going to adapt the information according to the level. So at elementary level, these questions I'm not going to ask them maybe their dream job when they're a child, and I might throw in some conditional questions for higher level learners. But what this kind of gives students, what I find at least, is that when they start speaking in front of a group for the first time, the fact that they can prepare a little bit what they're going to say, that they have a little bit of thinking time, I think really helps them to then actually produce more during the lesson. And so we always start courses in this way. They enjoy it very much. Either they can introduce themselves, choosing some of the boxes, choosing what they would like to present, or a typical activity, we can put them in pairs and they can introduce each other. So they're kind of practicing with a partner, they're practicing speaking with a partner before they have to speak with a group. And as we said before, producing language for the first time in front of strangers can be very scary. And so this little activity here can help them sort of have a little bit more confidence before they have to speak in front of a group. And so thinking of first lessons. Another first lesson activity, which is quite nice, is kind of a warmer, is sort of a moving conversation where we could kind of designate parts of the classroom to opposites. So for example, if I were to ask you, do you prefer the mountains or the sea? Do you prefer chocolate or cheese? So for example, if we did the first one, do you prefer the mountains or the sea? I would maybe have students who prefer the mountains go to one part of the classroom, and students who prefer the sea go to the other side of the classroom. And so this is quite funny to see what people's preferences are. And then within their group, they can kind of chat informally for a minute. Oh, you like the sea, and what do you like about the sea, and why do you prefer the sea? Do you go walking by the seaside? And it sort of allows them, to kind of chat informally again and sort of break the ice. And as somebody said here, it's kind of a nice way to build confidence before they're going to start talking within the group. And so I'll try with you. Let's see, if we had to choose, we'll do a quick survey here in the afternoon. Chocolate or cheese? What would the preference be? I don't have a poster that you can walk towards. Chocolate. If I had to, I do admit that mine would probably be chocolate as well. We definitely have a lot of choc lovers here. Okay, but also cheese, interesting. Okay, what about, I think a more difficult one perhaps, if you had to choose between the sunrise and the sunset, which would it be? Which captures your imagination more? The sunset. Okay, sunset. We very few early birds. Oh no, we have Hannah, Manuela, a few people have also said the sunrise. Okay. And so this is kind of a nice activity, and it's from experience an activity that actually makes students laugh quite a lot when they're kind of seeing that maybe they're the only person who likes cheese and the others like chocolate, and so it kind of gets them chatting. Okay, so as I said, we're still thinking about first lessons here and kind of breaking the ice. I'm going to ask you a really odd question. Have you ever met Angelina Jolie in the supermarket? And I'm going into the chat box. And if anybody says yes, we're going to have to make you put on your microphone immediately. Okay, we're getting no. In my dreams, yes. Oh, that's nice. I wish. Okay, so I think we can safely assume nobody has actually met Angelina Jolie in the supermarket. And I imagine if we did meet Angelina Jolie in the supermarket, you would actually be quite shocked and quite surprised. And the funny thing is, if I think of my daughter, who's 10 years old, if we go to the supermarket and we see her teacher, for her, it's like seeing Angelina Jolie. It's incredible to think her teacher could be in the supermarket with a trolley doing the shopping, because somehow her teacher is sort of this mysterious figure. And kind of connected to that is this idea that our students are actually very curious about us. They're very curious about our lives. And we do spend a lot of time asking students to tell us things about their lives, sometimes very private things as well, their hopes, their ambitions, their dreams. Poor students, we ask them to share so much. And so I think it's only fair that we also share and that they also find some things out about us. And so connected to this first lesson, usually you know, once students have kind of introduced themselves and explained their boxes and told me a little bit about who they are and where they're from and what their passions are, then usually I show them some photos, things connected to my life. And so you can take a moment, you can have a look at these photos here. And the idea is that the students have to guess why they think I chose these photos or what these things could be connected to in my life. Okay. Would you like to guess? Would you like to choose one of the photos? Why do you think one of these photos could be important for me? Reading is your hobby. Okay. Okay, reading, I do enjoy reading. These particular books are Harry Potter. So one thing I will share with you is that my children are Harry Potter obsessed. They both read the books and they also watch the films on a continuous basis. So our house is just Harry Potter mania. And so this is definitely something. You like cooking shows. I do enjoy cooking shows. I love cooking. I'm probably slightly obsessed with Jamie Oliver, I must say. I love Jamie Oliver's cooking. And so I also use his videos with students sometimes, also turning off the sound. So they watch the videos and they have to guess what he's going to cook. And, you know, sometimes he cooks maybe, you know, some British recipes. And so when I show these British recipes to my Italian students, sometimes they're horrified and sometimes they find it really funny that he's using ingredients that they wouldn't think of using. And so Jamie Oliver is a great resource actually for teaching. Somebody mentioned as well, maybe you married a chef. I wish. That's not, I haven't married Jamie Oliver and I haven't married a chef, unfortunately. But in this way, anyway, the students find out maybe a little bit more about me. And so it's a nice way of breaking the ice. And it allows me to understand a little better what their level is, especially when they're asking questions, because I think question forms is something that grammatically can be a little bit abandoned. And so it's nice to hear them, you know, formulate the questions and sort of see if that's something that has to be revised or not. And I saw some of you said that you write similar things on the blackboard as well, writing pieces of information and they have to guess. Yeah, they're all nice activities, I think, to start lessons. Another one, which, to be honest, you could probably carry on all year, is where maybe you choose 3 letters. So in this case, ABC. And it's something similar where perhaps you could give the example and say, you know, these are 3 photos, each photo connected to a letter. So A for animal, B for beach, and C for Christmas. And again, maybe they would have to, you know, try to understand why you chose these pictures. And this is something very nice they can then do themselves. So maybe they choose a photo on their phone, or this is maybe something you could either do spontaneously, or if you feel that would take too much time, they could prepare for homework their own 3 letters. But then they also have to share something about their life related to each letter, and this is very nice activity as well, because generally speaking, you know, people kind of want to share things about their lives. In this case here, I can just tell you that this is my little puppy, Arthur, who is completely spoiled, and he is the animal. B, I'm very fortunate to live near a beautiful beach called Porto Novo here in Italy, which I don't get to go to enough, but it's a really lovely place. And for Christmas, you can probably see I really enjoy buying tacky Christmas decorations, so Santa things to put on bottles of water, little coats to put on bottles of wine, anything that's Christmas themed. I'm embarrassed to say I've probably bought at some stage. Okay, so these are kind of you know, different things. Somebody's written here that I got students to do a picture collage at the beginning of the year after introducing themselves to the rest of the class. That's really nice as well. Because I think the pictures, you know, is if you followed any of my webinars before, I probably repeat to death the fact that we do think in images, we don't think in words. So I think the moment we can relate images or get students to talk about images, especially images related to their life, then you'll be surprised at how much they might have to say, especially in those first lessons when they might be a little bit shy and embarrassed. Okay. So just the last idea again is maybe showing a picture of an object. Okay, and then again asking, you know, what's the story behind this object? So what do you think it is? How old do you think the object is? Who do you think bought it for me? They could maybe in mini groups come up with a whole idea. And also there, it's the imagination of students, the things they come up with, and then you feel kind of sorry to tell them the really boring, story behind your object when they've just thought of this something really fantastic. And I'm happy to tell you that this object does actually exist in real life. And in case you were thinking something wonderful, I will tell you the boring story is it's a candle, but it's quite a beautiful candle, which my brother bought for me. And as I'm very close to my brother and he's very far away, I usually light this candle most evenings in the winter if I'm watching TV, and I kind of think of him. So it probably has a special meaning for me, but maybe you had thought of something much more interesting. So sorry about that. Okay. So we're going to move on to the idea now, just one or two quick activities for dictation. So sometimes when people hear dictation as well, they can kind of feel like, dictation, not so sure, it could be a bit boring. But I think dictation, it is something that a lot of people say a bit useless, a bit out of date, but I think it is something that can be quite fun, quite communicative if it becomes more learner-centered. And so just to quickly give you an idea, one is a dictogloss, and I'm sure you've done this before, this idea of kind of introducing something through pictures again. And so in this case here, we want to learn something about Anna and Anna's story. And so from the pictures, students would try to, maybe in pairs, guess or predict what Anna's story is about, and it's somehow kind of linking the pictures. And again here, the imagination of students and what they come up with is really really fantastic sometimes. And so obviously they have to, you know, come together. So they're, before they hear the dictation, you know, they're already full of ideas. Maybe they've come up with what the actual story is. And so when they actually then do the dictation, they're kind of ready to hear a lot of the words that they've already seen in the pictures. And this makes it that much easier. Okay, so just for time, I'm not going to go through the dictation with you, but I'm going to show you the example here of Anna's story. So usually what I would do is I would read this, and I would read it at a normal speed. And it's quite good if the text is just a little bit more difficult for them. You don't want it to be too easy. And the idea is that they don't have to write it down word for word, but they're going to try to catch as many main words as they can. So for example, Anna is from the beautiful city of Rome. She really needs to improve English for her job. So she's decided to travel to London to enroll in an English study program. She's also a keen tennis player. And so she's timed her trip so she can watch a match at Wimbledon. So clever Anna. And so you're going to sort of read it in a normal way, and they're going to write down as many words as they could catch. So they're going to kind of catch maybe, okay, city, Rome, English for the job, London, English study, tennis player. And then again, in pairs, they're going to try to put this story together and see how many things the two of them came up with, how accurate their story is. And as somebody wrote in the chat box there, it's a great activity to get students concentrated and focused on listening, because listening is one of those tasks which students find very challenging. And so maybe helping them to practice that they don't have to understand every single word and they don't have to hear the whole sentence. They're kind of practicing of catching the main words can actually help them in their comprehension. If we go on with this little story here of Anna from Rome, so the only problem is that, so there's a twist in the story, the only problem is that Anna is terrified of flying. She avoids it whenever she can. The last flight she took was a disaster. The airline lost her suitcase and she arrived at her destination 5 hours late. This time round, Anna has decided to travel by train, even if she will lose a day traveling. She is sure it will all go much more smoothly this time. And so there's a kind of a cliffhanger, dun, dun, dun. Will Anna's trip go well or not? And so here, perhaps with the students, you could sort of ask them, how do you feel Anna's story ends? You know, is it going to be a happy ending? Will she get to London? Will she get to her Wimbledon match? Or will it all go badly? And from experience, students love writing bad endings. They're right sort of disasters that some sort of alien came and took up Anna's train, but it's great for their imagination. And so they can predict the ending or finish the story. And then another little quick activity for dictation, again, is where they actually have to dictate to each other. And so that's sort of, obviously they can practice their reading skills, but allows the teacher to kind of, you know, go around and listen and sort of hear how they're interacting. So as teams, they have to dictate a text to each other. One partner has one half and the other has the other half. And so again, they're trying to put a story together. So there's kind of an objective for the text, or for the task, excuse me. And so together they're going to have the full story. And that's obviously similar to the activity before, because we're talking about a kind of a normal dictation. But in this particular case, maybe the teacher might decide to repeat a lot of language in the dictation. So perhaps they might decide in the dictation to repeat many, many times the word nice, or repeat many, many times the word beautiful, and then ask the students, okay, so, you know, we have this text. In the text, we have the word nice 10 times. Maybe that's a bit too much. What else could we say? Okay, so I don't know about you, but my own students really love using the word beautiful. They use beautiful a lot. Life is beautiful, but I don't know how often we have to use it. Or the verb think. I think. And so very often with students, we talk about the I think trap. Okay, so what else can we use? In my opinion, from my point of view, I reckon, I believe, I feel, all these words that they probably know, but they don't actually produce. And so it's, you know, to try to, in this activity, maybe get them thinking together, what other language could we use? Another one on my blacklist is the verb like. I like, which is absolutely fine, but there's so many alternatives. So I like, I love, I enjoy, I'm interested in, etc., etc. And so in this case here, if we were repeating the word nice, then this could be an opportunity to kind of say, all right, well, what else could we use? And maybe depending on the level of the students, kind of analyze other words that would be suitable in that text instead of the word nice. So would lovely be okay? Is it fabulous? You know, is the person happy? You know, what other words could we use? Okay, so that's just a little idea of dictation, that maybe perhaps it's something that if you haven't, as we said at the beginning, maybe it's something you haven't done for a while. All right. So moving on from dictation, as I said, maybe it's something that if you haven't tried in a while, you know, maybe play around with it, and it might be something that you might find useful in the classroom again. So now we're going to talk about using art in the classroom. And I think there's nothing like art to put sort of fear in people's hearts, actually. When they hear the idea of sometimes of creativity, they sort of think that they have to be Monet, and they start sort of panicking about art. So we're going to also think about this for a moment. So if we think of this idea of drawing, okay, so if we think about it, most people really have an appreciation for art, for beautiful images, for sculpture. You know, you go to a museum, maybe you mightn't understand everything in an art gallery, but you're going to look at it and say, wow, you know, that's amazing. But at the same time, you know, we kind of think, well, that's them, and they're great artists and they've incredible talent. But then if we think of the idea of bringing art into the classroom, it can seem a bit daunting. And very often teachers I work with say, oh, but I can't draw. Please don't ask me to draw. And they're kind of looking at you with slight panic. And so here, again, this is something that we could actually think about. So I'm going to ask you to do something. I don't know if you have paper and a pencil with you. Okay, I can't see you, so I'm going to trust you now. Okay, but I want you to grab a pencil and a blank page. Okay, or a lovely pink pen like I have, and I want you to draw 2 dots on a page. Okay. And then I want you to draw a line between them, okay? So you've drawn the 2 dots, you've drawn a line between it. You can draw. Okay, so this is your moment of positivity in the day. You can draw. And I remember actually having an art teacher when I was a child who would do this with us. And I must say I do enjoy drawing. But I remember going to an art class where they would really just focus on shapes and how putting shapes together, you can draw almost anything in a very basic level. And then obviously you can become more and more sophisticated. But the thing is, we can also bring drawing down to a very simple exercise. Okay, and if you absolutely hate drawing and you don't even want to think about it, I wanted to actually show you a resource which you may or may not be familiar with. Step by step, there are Usborne books, which I just find absolutely brilliant, where they you can have step-by-step drawing people, step-by-step drawing animals, but literally the books start with like maybe a simple circle, and then with the circle you're going to add a triangle, and then you're going to add a square. And so this is sort of a nice activity to do also with students, because also students, especially younger students, can start having a little bit of a fixed mindset about art and drawing, and sort of say, oh no, it's not for me. I'm not any good at drawing, and so it's very useful, I think, to bring in these type of resources where each one of them actually can produce a lovely picture and find, oh, I've just drawn a witch, or I've just drawn a cat, something they wouldn't imagine drawing. Okay, so these are just to tell you that these are two kind of nice resources. So what do you think of this artist? Thinking about our adjectives before, so we're not going to say he's a nice artist. What could we say? It's not me. I haven't drawn this picture, so you can be brutally honest if you want to. Would we say he's a good artist? Talented. Okay, thoughtful. Yeah. Okay, so he has potential. Okay, so practice makes perfect. So that's one of Vincent van Gogh's early drawings. So it goes to show you, with practice, we can create masterpieces. So he said, just for positive thinking here about art. But going back to the classroom and how we can bring art into the classroom, one simple idea, and I'm sure again you've done this lots of times, is the picture dictation. But I think the picture dictation really never gets old, because students love doing picture dictations, and as teachers we can find ourselves that we're able to practice lots of vocabulary areas depending on the picture that we choose. So thinking of the basics before doing a picture dictation, obviously we have to be sure that students are familiar with how we're going to describe the picture. So are we going to use the words at the top, at the bottom, on the left, on the right, or are we going to use in the background, in the foreground? So we just want that they're familiar with whatever language we're going to use. And we're going to do a little picture dictation now. Okay, so again, you need your paper and your pencil. Paper, pencil, your pen. Okay, you don't need colors. If you want, you can finish coloring it in and you can frame it later. Okay, for now we just need a rough drawing. I'm going to describe a picture to you, and I would like you to try to draw it. Okay, and afterwards we can see if your drawing is similar to the picture that I've described. Okay, so in this case, the page is divided horizontally. Okay, so there's a line across the middle of the page. At the top, there's the sky, and at the bottom, there's the grass. Okay, in the middle of the picture, there is a young boy standing. The boy is smiling. He is wearing a long-sleeved jumper. So here we get to practice clothes. He's wearing a long-sleeved jumper, and he's wearing a pair of shorts. He is wearing a hat which is turned to the right. He's wearing a hat which is turned to the right. Behind him, on the left side, is a moon, and on the right side, there is a tree. Okay, so I'm just going to read it again, this time a little bit quicker so you can double check. So the page is divided horizontally. There's the sky to the top and there's the grass to the bottom. In the middle, there is a young boy standing. He is wearing a long sleeve jumper and a pair of shorts. He is wearing a hat, which is turned to the right, and behind him on the left side is a moon, and on the right side, there's a tree. Okay, so as I said, you don't need to color it in. You can do that later if you would like to. What's at the bottom? The bottom, it's kind of, he's standing in the middle, and so you kind of have the grass and the sky behind him. Okay, so think of Vincent van Gogh. Practice makes perfect. So this is the actual picture. So you can compare if your picture was similar or different. So in this case, it's obviously it's a very kind of easy picture that I'm giving. I want to practice close. Okay, maybe I want to practice prepositions. I can obviously make this activity a lot more difficult, and I have. I've done so with students, and in this case, I've sort of maybe used the picture dictation as an introductory activity. So one of thinking of famous art and thinking of famous paintings, one of the somebody's written it's a cap, it's not a hat. Yes, you're right. Just to throw you off. That I've used the bedroom of Vincent van Gogh and got students to try to do this. And so you can imagine it hasn't always turned out very, very well, but this is a nice activity to get students to practice drawing their bedroom. And in this case, I've used it as an introductory activity when I want students to talk about their favorite room in their house, which for teenagers in particular is always their bedroom. And this is also a question that comes up, also thinking of language cert in the speaking tests. We ask students, you know, where's your favorite room in the house, or where is a place you go to switch off? It's a typical question that comes up in the speaking exams. And so an introductory activity can be that they do the picture dictation. Then maybe we talk about a teenager's bedroom. So in this case, Van Gogh, if we think as a teenager, maybe was very, very messy. And so maybe they have to label all of the clothes that they find in Van Gogh's bedroom. And an activity like this, you can obviously find on Google. I mean, you can find a lot of activities connected to Vincent van Gogh's bedroom. Somebody has written there about prepositions of place. Absolutely. So with the bedroom, depending on the level of the students, this is where you're going to say, you know, it's beside, there's the table in the middle, etc., etc. And then finally, the students are going to get on to the idea of talking about their own bedroom and thinking about what we said before, that we think in images, not words. And so any of these kind of activities that get students talking leading up to an activity are useful. Okay, so there's a wonderful book, if you haven't come across it, called The Creative Teacher's Compendium by Antonia Clare and Alan Marsh. And there are lots and lots of activities in this book. I can't imagine how much time it took them to write it, but they're lovely activities. And this is a quotation from their book where they talk about the fact that art is everywhere. It's both a personal and emotional experience, which often can be difficult to put into words. And I really like this line, that sometimes art can evoke and communicate our emotions in ways that words are not able to do, and that we're really visual creatures. Images are motivating and communicative, and working with images can make our teaching more memorable and enjoyable. So kind of bringing in also important works of art. And I have to say, doing the drawing dictation, the painting dictation, when they realize it's the Mona Lisa or it's Vincent van Gogh's bedroom, they kind of have that surprise element, and they tend to enjoy that quite a lot as well. Another thing, and I'm going to go a little bit quickly because I'm conscious of the time. Another one is, again, taking a famous painting, but choosing one which has people in it. And so getting the students to kind of think of questions that they would ask the person in the painting. So thinking of the painting there in the center, Vincent van Gogh, again, the cafe terrace at night. So they might ask maybe the waiter, you know, how long have you been working in this cafe? Is it a beautiful place where you're living in? Do you have any regular customers? I don't know, that they kind of imagine what they might ask somebody, or maybe they might choose a person from the party. And that's also interesting because students tend to choose completely different people. And so there again, you could maybe ask them some questions, and depending on the level, maybe we could ask them conditional questions. So who would you be if you were in this painting? Or simply just practicing question forms. And then what about if students really don't like art at all? And this also happens. There's another wonderful book called Multiple Intelligences in EFL. Herbert Bukta is one of the writers, but really lovely ideas in this book as well. And here they talk about taking a logical, mathematical look at a painting. So maybe if a student is a bit more logical, that, you know, you could maybe ask questions like, what questions might you ask the artist to find out how he created the painting? Or look what's happening on the canvas. Are things moving quickly or slowly? What color do you see the most of? What color do you see the least of? And so in this way, you're kind of taking a more logical approach and maybe involving more students who might be a little bit turned off by art. Okay. And then the very last thing, if I have another 5 minutes, Sylvia, or do I need to wrap up?
No, I think this is all really interesting. Please keep going for the next.
Thanks, Sylvia. Okay, so this is the last little part. As said, you could be here all day, really talking about all these different areas, and it's lovely sharing with you all. And you're putting lots of comments in the chat, which is great. But this idea of using film, I mean, there's so many things here as well that you could use. But again, you know, thinking that nowadays the idea of film and being able to understand media is actually very, very important, you know, of kind of having this type of digital literacy, being able to interpret words, being able to interpret sound. And so I think film actually has a very important place in the classroom, and I know certainly in the curriculum in the UK, this is something that's been brought in more and more through organisations like Into Film, where they're bringing in sort of this idea of students being literate in understanding films, which I think is very, very, very interesting actually. But I don't know if you've ever seen these videos. I'm probably a little bit obsessed with these, as well as Jamie Oliver. Now you know what I do at my time. No, not really, but they're called 50 people, one question. And so it's an activity. I'm going to show you the video in case you haven't seen it to understand what the video is. But you basically gather a lot of people and you choose one interesting question and people answer. And it's so interesting to see the different answers that people give. And this is something that could be a really nice sort of class project as well. You know, that you could introduce this type of video, which I'm going to show you a little small clip of in a second. Maybe ask the learners to discuss their ideas to the question, maybe together in groups, they could decide a question. It could be maybe be to something that you could do monthly, you know, that you have a monthly one question and see what they come up with. I'll show you a little part of the video, so maybe it's a little bit clearer what I mean, but these are lovely videos. You can find lots of them online, and I think it's definitely a nice resource for the classroom.
Hello?
We want to ask you one question. If you can be any age, what age would you be?
So the question, if you could be...
That's a curveball. That's a pretty good question.
I think
17.
20. 16.
Well, when I'm older, I get to have a sweet 16 party.
I want to work on a computer.
You finally can drive.
And you get to go to every party you want to visit.
Yeah, so the little girl wants to go to every party she could possibly can. And so just to give you an idea, and sorry we don't have as much time that I can't show you all the video, but they're lovely ideas. So in this one, it's sort of what would be your ideal age, and so obviously they're going to choose their age and then explain why. And you know, we'll all have different points of view, and that's wonderful. And I just want to show you one or two other quick ideas for using film. This one, again, is sort of the first impressions when students first watch film and they kind of think, I don't understand anything. A sort of mental block kind of comes in to kind of help them to see, okay, but what do you understand? To help them sort of overcome this idea that I don't understand anything in English. In this case, in the film, they would maybe introduce one or two characters, okay, and they have to try to brainstorm the information that they've learned about the characters. So without understanding, you know, everything that they're saying, maybe they've understood the age of the person, they've maybe perhaps understood their nationality, maybe what job they do. And so it shows students how much you can understand without maybe understanding the words. You know, they say that about 70% of languages, of communication is body language. And, you know, sometimes maybe we don't give enough emphasis to that in the classroom, that while the words are obviously extremely important and we teach words, we teach language, a huge amount of, you know, non-verbal language is also really important in helping us to understand some messages. So in this case here, the clip, we don't have time to watch it now, but maybe do you recognize this film? An oldie, but a goodie? It's like a quiz now. This time after listening to me, you're kind of getting, my brain is Notting Hill. Well done, Marilla. Okay, Hannah's also coming in. Okay, you're recognizing the film. So there's the clip of Notting Hill. This is lovely, where you see Hugh Grant, you see Julia Roberts, where they're meeting for the first time, and they have to kind of guess, even from the pictures, maybe even without seeing the film, you know, why is she wearing these dark shades? Why is she wearing the hat? You know, probably she's somebody famous. And what does he do? Well, he clearly works in a bookshop, and you know, that you can kind of guess all of the body language to see what they can understand before watching the film. Then you could maybe show the film again, just choosing a couple of key expressions like, can I help you? Thanks, I'll think about it. I'll call the police. Sorry, could you give me a second? And then they have to just try to catch who is saying what. So kind of breaking the film down into parts that they realize they don't have to understand everything, because I think that's where students get a bit demotivated, that even at lower levels, they somehow feel they have to understand everything. And I always say to them, it's a really good thing that you don't understand everything, because if you did, I wouldn't be here teaching you because you would already know it all. And so it's fine, you're learning a language, you absolutely don't need to understand everything, slowly, but you know, what can you understand from the visuals? Did you catch these key phrases? And that's, you know, kind of building up their confidence, I suppose. And then the last thing here is maybe, again, with lower levels, because somebody was saying at the very beginning about using authentic materials, and it's wonderful to use authentic materials because they are very, very interesting. But here it could be a case of just turning the sound off. If you think, okay, I have an elementary class, they're not going to understand a word of this, turn the sound off. And in this case here, and I'm just going to do that now, actually, and hopefully you won't hear from my computer, turn the sound off, and then playing the video, maybe asking the students, you know, this is clearly in a restaurant. Would you like to work? Would you like to be a customer in a restaurant like this? You know, what you see, what's happening. And so they're just looking at the images and deciding, is this a good restaurant? Is it a bad restaurant? And again, maybe using this as an introduction to into restaurant language. What do you think the waiter is saying? What are the people saying when they're ordering? What can you see on the table? And if you recognize this is Fawlty Towers. So I can tell you that it definitely is not a good restaurant. Definitely not. Okay. So I'm going to finish up there because we want to be respectful of your time. You're already wonderful to be here after your day's teaching. So I want to leave you with this nice quotation by Albert Einstein. So logic will get you from A to B. Imagination will take you everywhere. And so I think that's what we're trying to do, isn't it? With all of these lovely language, functional language things that we're trying to teach, of just trying to repeat them with students in different ways to keep them interested, and at the same time kind of consolidating these key grammar and vocabulary terms that we want to teach them. Okay, so I think that's all from me.